What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald's sports show about Inter Miami and all things soccer these days. Copa America, Euro, you name it. Big time for a soccer fan. But as I and my co-host Michelle Kaufman both know, we're waking up with a sour feeling as of this recording after seeing the U.S. bounced from the tournament. Not all unexpected, though, after what happened in the second match against Panama. Basically that was the debacle, losing that game to a team that they constantly beat in the CONCACAF all the time, and then the way that it happened too. But lots to talk about here. Michelle, this team, as much as we want to say that USA Soccer's better, they're just still at a certain tier that's just not there with the elites of the world.
Yeah, there's so much to unravel with this team. Everybody went to bed sour last night, and the fans, on the way out, the fans were chanting, "Fire Greg, fire Greg, fire Greg." Yeah. The team is just stagnant. The team has not improved. And, Greg Berhalter, I mean, he's a good guy and everything. I'm sure, he's a good coach. He knows what he's doing. But something is missing there. And, there are several things that I wanted to bring up. I was thinking about it last night and this morning. For a long time, everyone thought, well, the problem is that our players are in the MLS. Our players are playing in Major League Soccer. They're not playing in Europe. They're not playing against the best competition week in and week out. That's why they can't compete. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I'm looking at Canada. The Canadian team has 14 MLS players. 14 MLS players, and they advanced. The Panama team has 4 MLS players, by the way. Their leading scorer was playing in MLS as of a year ago. So I don't really think that that's necessarily the issue. Yes, the European teams, the European leagues, if you're talking about EPL, La Liga, Bundesliga, and Serie A, those are very, very good leagues. Obviously, those teams are very, very good. And the players who start on those teams are very, very good. One problem is that a lot of the players who go to Europe from the United States, they're not starters on big clubs. They are on the bench. And so, yes, they're at big clubs, but they're not getting minutes. So they're not getting minutes. And the way you get better is to get minutes, is to play. And some of these guys are not playing. The other thing I would say is that this group of players has been nicknamed, the golden generation. With reason. These are guys who were very talented at a young age, so talented that they went to Europe and were signed by some of them for big clubs. I mean, we have, players playing for AC Milan, for Juventus, some guys in the English Premier League, Nottingham Forest, whatever. But golden generation also maybe a little bit of a silver spoon from a American soccer standpoint, because I just feel, having covered the national team since 1994 and watching the days of Tony Meola and Alexi Lalas and Tab Ramos and those guys. And then, the next group with Landon Donovan and all the guys the guys, Kobe Jones and Beasley and all these guys, they were hungry. They were hungry to show that American soccer is good enough and can compete. There was just a certain grit and a certain hunger. And that is one thing that, just as an outside observer, it seems to me that this team, and Alexi alluded to it last night, he said these players are better soccer players, but they're not better U.S. men's national team players. And he made that distinction. And I think it's an interesting distinction to make. These guys, for whatever reason, but one reason may be that they feel like they've made it, they've gone to Europe, and I would take Pulisic out of that equation. I think he does show a lot of grit. He showed last night, arguing with the ref and being very angry and being very animated. And he is a really, really outstanding player who is starting for AC Milan and doing well. But otherwise, I think there are some players who maybe are too comfortable. And that then is the job of the coach. The job then of the coach, of Greg Berhalter, is to get these guys to feel uncomfortable, to get these guys to feel that they're competing for jobs, not that they have been anointed and they are going to be on the team and they're going to be starters just because of the clubs they play for. And I don't know. I think that is part of the problem. And then the last thing I'll say, and I do want to discuss what you think, like what, because one of the things also is that the result yesterday on its own, standing on its own, is not a bad result. To lose 1-0 to Uruguay is not a bad result. Uruguay is a very, very good team in CONMEBOL. You know, they have beaten Argentina. They're very high in South American qualifying right now. They are an excellent team, an excellent team. To lose to them 1-0, if you had told me before the tournament, when I made my pre-tournament predictions, I predicted Uruguay would probably win the group and the U.S. would finish second. What no one expected was that the U.S. was going to lose to Panama. And that happened, yes, partly because of Tim Weah, very boneheaded move to get a red card so early in the game. They played that game with 10 men. But that is the game that really, even though they ended up doing okay, but then falling apart, that's the game that was really the one that cost them. I don't think anyone expected that they were going to blow out Uruguay. And by the way, Uruguay went with their full starting lineup.
Yes, they did, which I was surprised, but yes, they did.
Remember, we had talked about that. Oh, well, maybe because Argentina did rest 9 starters. Right. And we thought maybe, they've already qualified. They're going to rest some guys. And so U.S. will have to beat their B team. No, U.S. had to beat their A team. Bielsa, who was not on the sideline, but he played all of his starters. And that was a very, very tough lineup. By the way, they played great defense. They're known for their defense. They played great defense.
They did.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, what?
I think that it's easy to dissect last night's game, but really we're dissecting the wrong game, because it would have been something near miraculous if they had won that game, I think, because of this. And you're right, they played really well. They were in it until, in fact, Bolivia tossed them a lifeline, like in the 70th minute. All of a sudden they tie the game. They're showing the live standings. I think that lasted all of like 1 minute, where you're like, oh, we have a chance. Oh, and then all of a sudden Uruguay scores the 1 goal. But even the result itself is nothing. But the debacle of this whole thing happened in the Panama game. Like you said, the red card, then they lose their goalie on top of that to injury. But it's just, again, I go back to, they always seem to have this problem where they fall
short.
They always fall short. They're inconsistent.
They always fall short.
They're inconsistent. I feel like
they're going to have to, right. And they are going to have to beat the Uruguays of the world if they are going to make any advancement in the 2026 World Cup. They can't. The problem with this team seems to be, except for the Panama game, which, whatever, they seem to beat the teams they're supposed to beat, but they never beat the teams that they're not supposed to beat.
But even then,
they're never going to advance. They're never going to advance in that fashion.
But even then, I feel like, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because you've covered, like I said, you've covered this team, the national side for a long time. I feel like I never see a sustained run of dominance with them. Like even if you're like a casual observer, once in a while, oh wow, they tied Brazil, or and then like 2 weeks later, the disappointing loss to, I don't know, Honduras or something. And then you're like, okay, is this side really better? Are they doing things right? Are they getting the right players here? Is this the right coach? Even before Berhalter. I mean, I'm not saying he's not at fault for some of this, obviously. And do they need to make a change? Probably. But here we go again. It's like, when are they going to find? And I don't even think it's all on the coach. I go back to the homegrown talent, what we were talking about the other day, of all of just developing players. They've started to do that better, but I think it goes back to the grassroots thing. Like, until you let a lot of the top kids play,
they lack creativity.
They lack creativity. You look at one of the Uruguay guys yesterday. He was dancing around them, like with the ball on defense. They ran into 2 guys. It was like, I mean, these are people.
And the only guy who can seem to do that is Pulisic. I mean, Pulisic, when you watch him with the ball, he looks like he's good, good on the ball. I think that the U.S. team, they defended pretty well. They really did. They defended pretty well. And they get it, up to the upper third, and then they don't create. If you look at last night's game, and the refereeing, we're not even going to, I mean, that was a terrible ref assignment. I don't know why they put a head referee with such little experience in a game with that much at stake. That was
Yeah,
a very big mistake.
I was not a fan of that guy. There was one play where Uruguay almost scored where I saw him take the yellow card out. He was
took the yellow
about to
card
give
out.
someone a yellow card. All of a sudden, he's like telling him, like, stop. They kept going, and he lets it happen. I mean, you imagine that? You imagine if in football, there's a pick six, and they whistle the play dead, and the guy keeps running, and then they're like, oh, okay, he picked it up and ran, so what? Okay, play counts. They almost scored on that play.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy lost all control of the match in like those 2 seconds. He lost
complete control of the match. And by the way, after the match, he did not, Pulisic put his hand out to shake his hand. He did not shake his hand.
Really?
So that was shown on camera. Yeah, that was shown on camera. Anyway, but then there was another thing shown on camera. It said I saw a lot of clips of that on social media. That's why you have to really make sure you watch everything in full, not just little clips, which is what our world has become, watching little snips and little snips. You're not always getting the full picture. Another clip that was longer showed, and again, it didn't mean he shouldn't have shaken his hand, but it showed that Pulisic right after the game went to the head referee and went like this, go over there and celebrate with the Uruguay team. Go over there and celebrate. Go celebrate with the team. Then he went over to shake his hand, and the guy didn't shake his hand. Anyway, but referee aside, the U.S. team had 3 shots on goal, and for a long time had one shot on goal for most of the game, and had 0. They scored 0 goals. They scored 3 goals the entire tournament. They scored 3 goals over 3 games. You are not going to advance in any tournament of any level at this height, with scoring just 3 goals in 3 games. And in last night's game, in a do or die game, not to score at all and to only get 3 shots. They are not creating in the final third. Their defense, I think, was okay. The midfield sort of does okay, get the ball up, but there's not the creativity. And when you talk about grassroots, I think that's what you're talking about. I think in this country still, when you look at the way basketball players develop in this country, they play on playgrounds from the time they're little. They're dribbling the ball. It's what they do. It's our culture. It's, and kids are playing in playgrounds and playing on their own and dribbling the ball around the house, dribbling in their sidewalks, dribbling on the neighborhood, basketball courts. And then they start to get coached. In soccer in America, kids are getting coached at 4 years old. That's not necessarily a great thing, because they're not just developing the feel and the love.
And if you can afford it.
The ball. And if you can afford it. That's the big thing too. So it's a suburban sport for the most part. Suburban kids whose parents are putting them in at 4 years old. And one of the dads or moms is there with a bunch of cones teaching the kids from drills that they probably learned on YouTube. Other countries, soccer is the culture. It's in their blood. And yes, there are exceptions, and it is changing. I will say one thing. The fact that we are debating this heatedly about the performance of the U.S. national team and whether the coach should stay or be fired, the fact that the whole country, or a lot of the people last night online, were posting memes and were posting angry comments about Berhalter must go, that shows the evolution of soccer in this country. Because let me tell you that 20 years ago, that was not happening. Everyone was just, the people who were soccer fans in this country were just like, rah, rah, way to go, boys. You tried hard.
It was more like a cult following, almost like a niche kind of thing.
It was
not as much sport as it is now. Yeah.
Exactly. Now everyone is, it's on regular TV. You can watch soccer all the time. So this nation has evolved as a soccer nation. People are watching a lot more. They're becoming more educated. More and more kids are starting to love the sport and have a passion for the sport. My daughter being one of them. My daughter she is keeping up on all the Euros. She's keeping up on Copa. She watches as a spectator. She's not just someone who went and played when she was little. She played, but she also is a spectator. So I do think that our country is evolving as a soccer country. We are not there yet. We are not there yet.
And I don't think, and honestly, as far as they've come, I still feel like it's almost like here's Brazil and Germany. Well, not Brazil, but maybe not anymore, but here's Germany, here's Argentina and all of that. Okay, yes, the US, I'm trying to get it in the frame here, was way down here. Now maybe they're like here, like halfway, like halfway there. But you talked about a 20-year evolution. I almost feel like I almost feel it's going to take like another 20-year evolution to get to that point. Like they've come from the basement to like now you're somewhere in the middle. Can they get that next jump at? And I think there's things that are fundamentally at the grassroots level that need to change. That what we just said right now about you grow up playing basketball. Any kid can pick up a basketball and go to the court and start playing, or go join a team, join a league and all that. Football, same thing. In the poorest of neighborhoods, kids, some of the best stars we see come from the poorest of situations in the beginning. Can't say that about soccer, not necessarily. And I don't know. And I was talking to a good friend of mine today, and it was saying the same thing. It's like, I don't know. I feel like that.
Well, the best athletes, right. The thing is, in the rest of the world, the top 23 athletes in that country, for the most part, in team sports, are playing for their national soccer team. Yes, there are other sports in the world. I'm not saying soccer is the only one, but as far as team sports go, especially in Europe and South America, and also in Asia and Africa, and in most parts of the world, the top athletes in that country are vying for national team spots on their national soccer team. When you watch the World Cup, for the most part, those are the elite athletes of those countries. In this country, we are still getting to that point. And part of it is, yes, the sport is very expensive here, and it prices out a lot of kids. And there are a lot of immigrant kids in this country, right here in Miami. And I talked about Pulisic last week, that he has that program now in Little Havana, which is full of South American kids. And there are a lot of immigrant kids in this country, all over the United States, who are from Latin America, Central America, and South America. Soccer is their sport. They do grow up watching it with their families. They grow up dribbling the ball around when they're babies. Those kids, a lot of them, are not able to get seen by American scouts. They're not seen by college scouts. They're not seen by U.S. national team U13, U14, U15, U16, 18 national team coaches. They're hiding because no one knows they're there. The players that they know are there are the ones that are coming up through the pay-for-play clubs, and those are very expensive. So I know that there are initiatives now to try to reach those kids, to broaden the pool. The U.S. needs to broaden the pool. This country has 300 million people. 300 million people. Yeah. There have to be 23 better players in this country. There are. I'm sure there are. We don't know who they are. We don't know who they are.
And you can't tell me they're all taken by the other sports, because some of them play, a lot of them play the other sports, but there's still way more that either don't make the cut at that sport and could be good at this sport, and we just don't know, or just. Yeah, that's the frustrating part, and that's the part that I think is going to take a much longer time. I mean, you look at these players. Look at how Messi in these games for Argentina, the way he's being defended. It's another caliber of player that's defending him, and that's why in MLS sometimes it looks so easy for Messi, because you compare levels of what the opposition he's facing there to the opposition he's facing now as part of Argentina. You can tell the difference in caliber, like it's clear.
Right. Well, Uruguay has beaten Argentina. Colombia is playing out of their mind too. I mean, Uruguay is a very good team. That's why I'm saying losing to Uruguay by 1 goal is nothing to, it's nothing to be ashamed of. They have an excellent defense, and even the times that Pulisic did try to get in there, or that somebody, tried to get in right at the end, they were right there. I mean, the Uruguay defense just was there. They were like a wall. And so yes, the U.S. got grouped. Mexico got grouped. The United States and Mexico, 2 CONCACAF teams, both out of the tournament. Right. And Panama and Canada are in. That is a very big surprise, that of the CONCACAF teams, you would have predicted for sure even if they weren't going to win the group. And I said from the beginning that Mexico was up and down and in a struggling point right now, and that the U.S. probably would not beat Uruguay in the group. However, I thought for sure U.S. and Mexico are going to go through as the second place teams. I did not think Panama and Canada were the two teams that were going to go through, and that is what we have right now.
And that's why I go back to it's almost like I've seen this movie before, where the opportunity is there. You're looking, okay, here's the slate. All right, you've got to beat Bolivia and you've got to beat Panama, right? Very doable.
Yeah, doable.
Take care of business.
Winnable.
And then if you lose to Uruguay, hey, it's fine. Maybe, and then we're happy with a 1-0, not happy, but we're understanding of a 1-0 loss last night. But now, and guess what, everybody? Of course, they would have had Colombia next. So good luck with that. Another team that's getting to the point where they're pretty much on the level with Uruguay. Like we said before, that's Panama's reward in that round. But hey, we press on. We'll see what happens with Greg Berhalter now. What's the future? 2 years to go before the World Cup.
What do you think? Should he be fired? Yes, no. And what do you guys think out there? All of you out there that are watching and listening.
I think he will be. I think he will be, because I think that, like you said, the fact that it's been stagnant for a couple of years, that's the problem. I'm not a fan of changing coaches right now with 2 years to go for the World Cup. But at the same time, it's not like he just got there. He's been there for a while. And if this is an ongoing problem and they truly believe nothing's going to be fixed, maybe they think someone can come in and in 2 years can get this at least a little bit better, where they're more competitive.
Bruce Arena's available. Bruce Arena's unemployed, by the way.
Been there, done that. You never know.
He did, but he took the U.S. to the
I know.
World Cup. They went to the quarterfinals, the best they've ever done.
That's right.
Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there.
No, for sure.
Greg Berhalter, I did see a stat. Greg Berhalter, he's in his 7th year. It said, now I have to go check, but I believe this is true because I did do some research, that they have not beaten a top 25 team outside of CONCACAF in the time that he's been here. So again, the idea that they have beaten teams that they were supposed to beat. They have beaten Mexico, and I think that was like this speed bump that they had before, that they couldn't beat Mexico. And now they have beaten Mexico on a regular basis. So I think everyone got very excited. Oh, we can beat Mexico.
Yeah,
we can beat Mexico.
But look at Mexico
now.
Right.
That's such a big that's not such a big
the Dolphins are the Dolphins are manhandling the Patriots these days. But hey, guess what? It's not Tom Brady's Patriots. So that's what it reminds me of. Like,
yeah, exactly. So it's like, look, the U.S., okay, they can beat Mexico, but Mexico didn't advance either. So that's not a big woo-woo. And, and the rest of the times that they've played teams that are favorite, they don't beat them. They never pull off those surprises. When you watch the Euros and you see some of these teams pulling off surprises, they're not pulling out. You're not seeing,
and if
Switzerland is beating Italy. They're not pulling off surprises.
No, there's no Georgia knocking off a Portugal, something like that for them. And if they do, it's at a random friendly where maybe they get a scoreless draw or they get a great result, something like that, and it really means nothing.
Right. It's not a game. It's not a game that counts. So I just think the overall feeling, I think, is that the U.S. is kind of stuck at a plateau. They've just reached a point where they don't improve. They're not getting better. And that is what Greg's job coming in. It's not that he was taking over a horrible situation. He was taking over what is considered golden generation. The players who are playing in Juventus and playing in Italy, playing in England, playing in Germany. They're playing in top leagues over there. Some of these guys, some of them are on the bench in top leagues, which is not helping anybody, but at least they're watching top level games. But, I look at Canada, like I said, 14 players from MLS. Jurgen Klinsmann, 8 years ago in Copa America with a team that had, I believe, 6 or 8 starters from MLS. They went 2 further rounds in Copa America, with Jurgen. And I know people had their issues with Jurgen, but the team did better in Copa America with Jurgen than this team has done with players who are considered the golden generation. Right. So there's something missing. Is it that the players in Europe are not playing enough? Is it that they feel that they've made it, so they don't have the hunger and the grit and the fight that the other U.S. teams had in the past? I don't know. Maybe that's not it either. Maybe just our overall pool of talent needs to be improved, which
And
is what we talked about with Grassroots.
And that's going to take time. I mean, grit is great. Grit's admirable. You need it. It's an ingredient for success, but it's only going to take you so far if you don't have the talent. I'm sorry, and we just don't. I think, and unfortunately, that's not gonna magically skyrocket in the next 2 years before the next World Cup. That's going to be something gradual. That's going to have to happen little by little. But
do you think that Panama? You look at the Panamanian team. Look at the clubs they're playing. You think Panama and Canada have better talent than the United States?
No,
right
not
now.
Necessarily. No.
Do you think Panama and Canada, if you look at their roster
fluky.
top to bottom?
This is fluky. I mean, great for them in this tournament, but this is fluky what they're doing right now. And we'll see it because in the next round, probably the powerhouses will put their feet down and knock them out of the tournament, as it probably,
if they don't,
reality check.
If Canada or Panama advances to the semifinal, for the United States, because that means the gap is even bigger in CONCACAF, because the idea before was, hey, US and Mexico are the top of CONCACAF. So, we know that those two are the top of CONCACAF, and then everyone else is fighting for third place for that third place spot. The one thing I will say for the next World Cup, and by the grace of, the host countries get in. I mean, and US, Canada, and Mexico are hosting the next World Cup.
Right.
So I believe all three of those teams will get in to the World Cup. What they do after that remains to be seen.
Yeah, an expanded field, right? And this is the first one that has the 48 teams now, I believe.
48 teams. 48
teams. Even more. But we've made this the World Cup USA show, but we have to talk a little bit about our local world superstar here.
Let's talk about
that. We were talking about Messi and how, the talent levels that he faces. But what's the latest, Michelle, that you've heard on Lionel Messi? We know he's a little banged up. He didn't play. Well, he didn't play Argentina-Peru, but to be fair, Argentina, he probably wasn't going to play that game anyway.
They rested 9 starters. Starters, Argentina.
I mean, 4th of July, they're facing Ecuador, first knockout game for them. They look like they can't be stopped right now the way they're playing.
Yeah, when you look at their B team, I mean, their B team can beat the Argentine team that played the other day against Peru. That team would beat, I think, almost every team, if not every team in this tournament. Although, like we said, Colombia, Uruguay, there are teams that are still playing well, very well. So it remains to be seen. I don't think you can hand them the Copa just yet. There are games left to be played. It's interesting, Lionel Messi didn't play in his club game, or he did not play in his club game, and he did not play in his national team game, and both of those teams won without him. So Argentina won without him with a spectacular, backup team that's very good. And then we'll talk about Inter Miami after. As far as Messi's condition, he did practice yesterday. He did practice with the group yesterday. He did some work on his own in the morning. They practiced at FIU, Florida International University, before taking off for Houston. They are now in Houston, where they're going to face Ecuador on Thursday, on July 4th, in the quarterfinals. So he did have some work on his own at the beginning of the training yesterday. The National Federation sent some video out, but then he did practice with the group. And the players that I spoke to after the Peru game, the Argentine players I spoke to, said that he's in a very good mood, that he seems really animated, that he seems optimistic, and they were optimistic that he would be able to play on Thursday against Ecuador. Lord knows he wants to play. We know how much that man wants to play. He does not like to sit out. I can tell you that. The man wants to play 90 minutes, and if he can play, he's going to play. This, is possibly his last Copa America. He wants to play. So, and Ecuador is, that's a decent opponent too. It's not like they can none of this is a walk in the park. Right. So I do think that, they are optimistic that he's going to play. I don't think it's guaranteed 100%, but he wants to play, and he did practice yesterday, which is good news for Argentina. It's also good news for Inter Miami, because they certainly don't want an injured Messi returning to the team in a few weeks. They want a healthy Messi. In the meantime, this Inter Miami team, they won their third game in a row. This is something we didn't predict either. Everyone kind of thought, June 1st, When Messi leaves, when Suarez leaves, when Matias Rojas leaves, this team is going to maybe fall off a cliff or at least fall off a hill. This team, 3 games in a row against strong opponents. I mean, Nashville at Nashville, Philadelphia at Philadelphia, and the Columbus Crew, which, by the way, they announced the MLS All-Star roster yesterday for the All-Star game. The Columbus Crew has 5 players in the MLS All-Star game. Inter Miami has 4. Take a guess, everybody. Which 4? Andre, which 4 players do you think made the All-Star game?
George, John, Ringo. Oh, you know who. Yeah. The
Yes.
Fab Four, baby.
The Fab Four, but 2 of the Fab Four are missing. And yet they won at Nashville. Ian Frey, second game coming off 3 ACL surgeries. The guy scores again. He's a defender, remarkable. By the way. He is not a forward. We're talking about a center back. We're talking about a versatile defender, but the guy has scored 2 goals in 2 games, which is remarkable. And then Jordi Alba. If anyone has not seen Jordi Alba's goal, go on YouTube, go on somewhere on Google and find Jordi Alba's goal. Pure class. Phenomenal. Pure class. Phenomenal goal. So, I mean,
and
what can you say about this team?
And Drake Callender stepping
Big game
up too.
For Drake.
We've talked about him too and being more consistent, and he has been in these last few games.
Yes, Drake Callender had several saves, but a huge save. Hani Mukhtar, who's a great player, by the way, had a shot at the end, and he saved it right in the corner with his foot. And that would have been it. So, they are playing so well. 3 games, 9 points without their Copa America players. I mean, by the way, I wrote a feature about Tata Martino last week. I wrote a feature saying, hey, guys, Tata deserves some credit, all right? This guy has been pulling the strings in the shadows of these superstar players. And a lot of people may think you just throw these guys out. Of course he's winning. They have Messi. Of course he has Suarez. Now he doesn't. And even when he did, he had to decide when they're going to play, when they're not going to play, when are they going to rest. Now he does not have those star players, those 2 up front. And the team has won 3 consecutive games, 2 of them on the road. By the way, they are unbeaten in 7 road games right now. They are unbeaten in 7 road games. So again, Tata Martino deserves some credit as the coach of this team. And then the team itself, the backup players, the players who did not get many minutes before, and even the ones who did, who are in the shadows, they are playing extremely well. The team is leading Supporter Shield, top record in the league with 44 points. They have scored 48 goals in 21 games, which is by far more than any other team, 48 goals with 13 games left to play. By the way, real quick number crunching here, 44 points they have right now with 13 games left. Last year, 2 teams, Red Bulls and Charlotte, made the playoff play-in game, crossed the line with 43 points. So they already have more points with 13 games to go than 2 of the playoff teams had last year. So they are sitting in very, very good position right now without Messi and without Suarez and without Matias Rojas.
So even though they haven't mathematically clinched the playoff spot yet, realistically at this point, which, seeing where they are, you would think it would take an epic collapse. And considering that they're playing so well without these guys, that's the best they could hope. I mean, remember, we were talking about it for weeks, how this kind of valley was coming where they were going to be without all these guys. And they're not only staying afloat. They're not only staying afloat, and they've had to.
Saying, if they could stay afloat, if they could maybe stay in 3rd place. You and I talked about it.
Right.
We said, well, maybe they're going to drop from 1st place, but maybe if they could at least stay in the top 3, I mean, now they're still in 1st. I don't think anyone predicted 9 points playing against the Columbus Crew at full strength. By the way, with 5 MLS All-Stars at full strength. They beat Columbus. Bicep emoji. They beat the Columbus Crew, and they beat Philadelphia, and they beat Nashville at Nashville. That is nothing to sneeze at. And I know that most of the world has no idea this is happening because once again, MLS is playing during these other tournaments, which everyone else is focusing on Euros and Copa. Who is talking about MLS other than us?
Right.
Because we, on this podcast, we cover it all and we don't ignore. We are
That's
not
right.
just covering Messi. We cover Inter Miami with or without Messi. But
and if you and if you don't care about the USA team and you hung with us through 28 minutes of that conversation, you know that right now.
That's right. We cover, we're not just the Messi podcast, although we do mention him a lot. Yes, we do. But, you know, Inter Miami has been very, very impressive. And so now they have 2 more games on the road back to back. It's a tough week. They play Charlotte tonight, Wednesday night, Charlotte on the road, and then Cincinnati on Saturday on the road. The second place team that is breathing down their neck. They are breathing down their neck.
I was going to say, not to overlook Charlotte, because Charlotte right now would be a playoff team too. But that Cincinnati game is huge because, like we said, that was the team that no matter the cushion has been built between Inter Miami and the rest of the league, but not Cincinnati. Cincinnati has stayed right on. They're only 2 points back. So
they're 2 points
if
back.
they lose
That's the
that
only
game,
team. Right. After Cincinnati, there's a drop to third place. I think 36
like
points
a 9,
or something. There's a big point drop. Right. But, it's basically been Inter Miami and Cincinnati. Inter Miami and Cincinnati.
This is a huge game on the weekend because they could lose one loss and they lose first place if this keeps up. So
Cincinnati is a very good team. Their home crowd is amazing. I remember last year when I went to the Inter Miami game against
the US
Cincinnati.
Open
The US Open semi. And Inter Miami went up there. And by the way, in all the other stadiums that they played in, there was pink everywhere, and everyone was there to see Messi. I pointed out then when I went to Cincinnati and I stepped in that stadium, that place was orange and blue. It looked like a Florida Gator football game at the Swamp. Okay. That did not look like a team that was playing Inter Miami. There were a few little pink jerseys here and there. Those Cincinnati fans love their team. They are not there to see Messi. They were there to see Cincinnati. There are bars around there where people are watching the games and doing the little walk to the stadium and all that stuff. That is a great market for MLS. That team is excellent, an outstanding team. And that is who they face on Saturday on the road. So they have Charlotte Wednesday, and they're staying. By the way, they never went home. Just for what it's worth, they never went home from the game the other day at Nashville. They stayed in Nashville for 3 more days. They trained in Nashville, and they just went to Charlotte on Tuesday to Charlotte. They stayed in Nashville, trained in Nashville, went to Charlotte on Tuesday, are playing in Charlotte Wednesday. They're staying in Charlotte Thursday to train. Friday, they're flying to Cincinnati from Charlotte. So they never came back to South Florida. They're staying on the road. It's that was an interesting approach, I thought.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we'll see what happens with Charlotte and we'll see what happens with Cincinnati, but 2 very big games coming up. So far, they have been very, very impressive, super impressive. And hats off to Tata. Really, really, truly. Hats off to Tata.
They're trying not to break the momentum in any way they can. Maybe keep them nearby, not break the momentum by coming back home and then going back up. Keep everything the way it's going right now because they need it. And like I said, that's especially that Cincinnati game. That's one you circle on the calendar because when you look at those standings, 44-42, one victory can still flip it. And like you were saying, the Red Bulls 35 after that. So you're talking more than 2 wins, more than 2 wins needed at that point. And then they've distanced themselves 11 points ahead of the reigning champion Columbus, and that's the top 4 right there. So. Yeah, huge game. If they can pull this one off, they're looking good. They're really looking
good. We watched those of us who watched the Panthers, the hockey Florida Panthers parade, the championship Stanley Cup parade the other day. Yeah. And, people are talking about, the other teams down here that, the Dolphins haven't won in a long time. Inter Miami, there could be a parade.
Might be next.
Possibly. There'll be the next parade. Maybe there'll be the next parade. It's
they've lifted one. Hey, they've lifted one trophy already.
They lifted the Leagues Cup. Right. They lifted the Leagues Cup trophy, which we know is not as big a deal. Or, they did beat Mexican team. It's a big deal. But if they could win MLS Cup, there could be another parade in South Florida. It's a long way to go. It's a long way. There are some really good teams in MLS that they would have to get we're talking about Cincinnati, Columbus, we know is good. And then in the West is good. LAFC, LA Galaxy. There are teams in the West that are very good. So it's a long way away, but Inter Miami looks like it looks like a contender, no question.
And I think narrowing the focus to just to them, there's motivation now, because look at what happened with the Champions Cup earlier this year and falling short there, getting beat so badly in Mexico. They want to get these trophies. They want to get this Leagues Cup the next time it comes around, and they definitely want to get the MLS Cup and validate what they've done. You know, they need that hardware to show they've built this super team, but they got to get the championships to validate everything that they've put together, everything that they've built.
Yep, absolutely. So, well, we've covered a lot. There's so much going on. I mean, it's fun, and now we've got the knockout rounds. Everything now is knockout. Until July 14th, both the Euro Championship and Copa America Championship are both on July 14th. So if you're a soccer fan, I know what you're doing on July 14th. You're sitting in front of your TV all day and night. Yeah.
By the time this recording comes out, the Euro will also be in the quarterfinal round. We know they have one extra round because they have more teams in that tournament. But what do you think of that one? Because I mean, Spain clobbered the underdog Georgia, but I feel like they haven't really been tested yet. But here comes Germany, and France is still France.
Yeah, so. France, they had France, they didn't dominate. Germany looks very good. Germany and Spain, we talked about those two teams. And England, OMG,
England,
that goal by Jude Bellingham. My mother, I know she watches this podcast, so my mom is watching. My mom called me. My mom was watching the Euros just by chance. She loves the Copa. She had not really watched much of the Euro. She called me on the phone immediately. Did you see a guy on the England team was on the ground upside down and he scored a goal? I've never seen
good old
that
bicycle
before.
kick. Yep.
A bicycle kick. I mean, my mother was watching that game. That goal was one for the ages. I mean, that goal, and not just yes, it was a bicycle kick, which was incredibly acrobatic and athletic, but the situation, they were about 15 seconds from blowing that whistle.
Funeral.
It was a funeral. They were already saying that England, this is the worst loss since England, since the United States beat them in 1950.
You want to talk about how Americans felt about their soccer team? Multiply that by 10. And that's how England
by 100. If England was knocked out in that game, those fans, they were already in mourning when he scored that goal, and not only scored it, but the way he scored it to give them that life. And then immediately, a couple of minutes into the extra
1
time,
minute into Harry Kane.
Boom, Harry Kane scores. And now they advance, and there they are. Yeah. So, I mean, this sport creates those moments, and this sport, because it's so hard to get a goal, when someone does score one in a situation like that, it is so huge. And that's why I always say, I love basketball. I love American football. I love other sports, soccer, and, in hockey to a certain extent too. It's so hard to score. It's a lower scoring game. Yeah. But when they do score, those goals are so meaningful. And when they do it on a bicycle kick with 15 seconds before the whistle, and England of all countries is going to be knocked out of the European Championship, and all of a sudden they're not. And they're back in. I mean, that is just a huge emotional swing. It was fabulous.
You felt for Slovakia, who was on the flip side of that. 20 seconds from one of their biggest wins in the history of their country.
What do you mean one of?
Probably their biggest. You're right.
Their biggest. Yeah. They would have never won a bigger game than
like that. And then to have it ripped away literally like that with a goal in the closing seconds, and then again, and then you have to. And then the funny part is the way the sport's constructed, where you have to play out that entire overtime right after you got hit with the other shock and awe of a Harry Kane goal, and right off the face-off practically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what and England with an interesting, not exactly the same as the US, but suddenly they had lots to talk about. Are they happy with that quick little burst, or are they worried that they played like crap for 90 minutes and haven't been consistent?
Yeah. No, they're not totally satisfied in England either.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it'll be interesting to watch.
Yes, lots to watch between now and our next show.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll be coming back. I know this has been a long episode, but we'll be back next week to go over not just where the Euros stand, not just where Messi is, not just where Argentina is going, but Inter Miami, because this is an Inter Miami show, and see how those 2 crucial road games went and what's ahead for the team. So for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks again for watching Inside Inter Miami, and we'll see you next week.